Hi, everybody. Welcome to Setting and Achieving Goals with Adaptability, a microlearning brought to you by the People and Organization Development team here at UC Berkeley in our Berkeley People and Culture office. So we're going to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Colin Gerker. I am the project manager and training lead for the Achieve Together Performance Program, which is our brand new performance program for non-represented staff.
And my name is Jan Crosby Taylor, and I'm the change manager working with Colin on our Achieve Together project. And we're very excited to be able to bring you this brief learning session focused on growing knowledge and skills for solid expectation setting that makes space for adaptability when priorities are changing.
We'll cover strategies for setting and achieving goals with adaptability, and also to discuss how setting expectation related to job responsibilities, goals, how we collaborate, how we bring new ideas into action, and how we build and sustain inclusion in the workforce, but also how setting and revisiting expectations takes planning, practice, and an ability to lean into opportunities to revisit, refine, and adapt priorities as things change.
And then we'll also share with you how the Berkeley and People Culture team can help you when you are searching for additional resources or you just need one-on-one support.
Let's talk a little bit about how Achieve Together helps us be more flexible and supportive around performance.
So first, we're going to look at the Achieve Together, which includes 3 check-in questions. Of course, you're going to probably be doing regular one-on-ones and spontaneous discussions as a manager, but we'll be focusing here on those check-ins. And you'll be checking in about performance, what's going well, what might be opportunities for improvement or changes, how things are going generally, priorities when they change, professional development for the employee. And you can visit the check-in page on the Achieve Together website for more information on how to prepare for and engage in these conversations.
Achieve Together also includes new, clear guidelines for all non-rep employees and for managers and supervisors around 5 performance indicators. And those are job mastery, goal accomplishment, innovation, inclusion and belonging, and collaboration. This is called the achievement criteria, and just like you can find the information about how to be successful with check-in conversations, you can also learn about the achievement criteria, how to use it, and those behavioral indicators that map back to those 5 performance indicators on our website.
And so the third major upgrade with Achieve Together includes ample flexibility for goal setting. Goals can now be set for any length of time. They should be revisited as priorities change and adjusted if needed. And now Colin's going to spend a little bit of time detailing how we get started with these goals.
So with the new format of goal setting, this provides a lot more flexibility, right? With goals being able to be set for any length of time. Some employees have work that goes on for about 2 years, a year. Some folks have goals that kind of pan out for 8 months, 4 months, a month. So now we're no longer hardwired to a 365-day goal planning cycle. Goals are really now responsive to the types of work that we have that's really based off of each individual. So we do have to make sure that those are aligned with unit priorities, that they're time bound so folks know when work is supposed to be accomplished, and that they're clear and unambiguous. One thing we also want to share is that managers are responsible for managing performance. Managing performance includes assigning goals, coaching and developing employees towards those accomplishments. We want to reinforce that with managers and supervisors being responsible to assign goals, but to do so in a way that is engaging with the employee to make sure that it's a conversation, and that the goals have clear expectations, they're unambiguous, time-bound, attainable, but also that there's a stretch for excellence, and to make sure that you've identified ways to check in when priorities change. So what types of goals shall be set? Types of goals are professional development, job-related, special projects, stretch assignments. So all employees will have one professional development goal. This is really the skills, experiences, knowledge, and activities needed for future career growth for an employee. So it's really, really big that as an entire organization, for non-rep employees, everyone has a professional development goal at any time. When we're thinking about kind of stretch assignments, it's kind of related to a special project that maybe this is a little bit outside of the regular norm, outside of someone's comfort zone, but also thinking about ongoing growth. So it's a great opportunity to reflect on the variety of types of work that we do, but also to be able to discuss where are we and what if things change and how might we plan for that. Also being sure to discuss and set expectations around the 5 performance indicators in the achievement criteria. So really not just the goals piece, but how we work together, how we collaborate, how we innovate, how we're responsive to our job responsibilities and our job description, and how we are all responsible for building an inclusive community. This is a great time to have employees spend time on training, personal career growth, et cetera, in their work. So the hr.berkeley.edu/grow website has many resources that employees can explore. So when we're talking about professional development, it's a great place to kind of get started and think about where do we want to go with that overall career growth. So when do we revisit goals? Check-ins about performance include discussing goal setting with time-bound expectations and outcomes. So as we talked about before, as priorities change, really so should the goals. And those really need to be reflected and documented, but they should be revisited as the priorities change. Not to have to wait for a check-in conversation, where it's a little bit more of a formalized process of talking about what's working and where we're going next. But as the things are changing, making sure to have those conversations, lean into the unknown a little bit, to plan around what's next, but to make sure that you're documenting that. So you can visit the goals page on the Achieve Together website for all the information that you need to know around how we think about goal setting at UC Berkeley.
So I'm going to now talk a little bit about setting goals with adaptability, the fact that we need to be able to be adaptable and things change. So the priorities of any department or team will vary across campus. So during this time, we want to ensure that we're maintaining excellent support and results while working remotely. So it's important to do what you need to do to sort of make sure that as a manager that that's going on. It's also critical for employees to know what the priorities are, and if they change, to communicate that to them. Understand what they need to be working on, how they can continue growing and developing in their roles, even in a time of perhaps uncertainty or quite a bit of change. It's important to have sort of that long-term goal and that expectation. It helps give a little stability as well. For any goal, we want to create multiple strategies. This would be true in any kind of situation. Whatever the change of situation could be, you want to make sure that multiple strategies have been presented and with expected outcomes for quickly shifting priorities or when conditions change, and creating variable deadlines. So that's something that you might consider is how long it might take, and that that there may not be a particular date, but perhaps a range in which activity will be completed. And you're going to want to be sure to use the achievement criteria to discuss and plan for what work will happen and how will it be conducted. Again, Colin mentioned that achievement criteria is our guide. There's also the change in mindset, and you really want to lean into the opportunities with priorities changing. Goal updates should be reflected as priorities change, and documenting those updates to the goals now and then also when you go into the first achievement criteria. So as things are changing for an employee right now, maybe in April or May, those changes can be documented however you might do that, and then they'll actually be part of your check-in conversation in the goals review. And it's important to think about, how are we making an impact at Berkeley? This is a great opportunity for managers and supervisors to engage with employees and support them in doing the work that makes sense, given different transitions, and to support them in understanding the expectations and impact of their results. So take the time to discuss the achievements also, to celebrate the wins and celebrate the positive actions that your employees, perhaps on a quick notice, have done changing, pivoting in what they're doing. And it's important to recognize that and to celebrate that however you can.
So with the new kind of flexibility around goal setting, also thinking about variable kind of strategies, making sure that we are prepared and have confidence to shift as we go on, to recognize those priorities changing. We do have a quick kind of refining goals checklist for you. So even if you have read everything about goals and you've listened to everything we have to say about setting goals adaptively, these are some really important questions to ask yourself when making sure that these goals are solid and that folks have a clear understanding of what's going on. So can it be readily understood by those who must implement it? Is it measurable, verifiable? Is the objective realistic and attainable, one that represents a challenge? Does it relate to roles, goals, mission of the unit, making sure we're moving in the right direction? Is it consistent with basic organizational policies and practices? Does it include deadlines or some of those kind of ranges of time for completion that Jan was mentioning? Will the outcome justify the expenditure of time and resources required? Can accountability for outcomes be clearly established? Now we're going to learn a little bit about what our experts are saying.
So we interviewed a number of our colleagues and thought we would find out what they think about goal setting. So here's Annette Dishler. She is our senior lead learning and development specialist, and she's been doing a lot of work around our coaching. And she says goal setting should always be seen as a dynamic that adjusts for changing circumstances and acknowledges when goals have been completed and new ones need to be set in real time. It is a time of great uncertainty and instability. We will all have to be more flexible and understanding. This provides a good opportunity to see if some goals should be removed temporarily or permanently, and different ones needed to be set that might reflect current realities.
From Kathy Mendonça, our Senior Instructional Design and Learning Specialist, in uncertain times, I find it helpful to look only at the immediate time period. And for my manager to set expectations that for right now, really to check in on priorities and where things fall on that list. This is the work, but that as things are unfolding, work may shift and change. This gives me comfort in having meaningful work to grab onto in the short term, but also keep my mind nimble enough to be able to let go of that work as situations unfold and my assignments need to adjust accordingly. So I think Kathy has that awareness of kind of the emotions and cognitions that kind of go behind that change and what is really needed to prepare for thinking about that change. So thanks, Kathy.
So a couple here from, one from Shirley Giraldo. She is our informal and social learning lead. And she says, building in contingency plans to the best of your ability, i.e. we'll hold an event virtually, and if we can return to campus by a particular date, we'll add a venue to make that hybrid event. That's a really great idea. Our training lead, Keith Samsel, who does organizational development training materials, he says, I would attempt to ensure that my collective team had the ability to take this change factor and make it a catalyst for improvement. This is not a, if this was a SWOT diagram, I'd be turning off all of the external threats into strategic opportunities for my staff.
Ying Hua, our people and organization development lead, says, I work on setting priorities around the needs of the organization. So really the bigger picture and having that in the front mindset when planning out future work. Elizabeth Wilcox, our organizational consultant, says it's not about perfection in our current environment. Think short term, 2 and 3 week goals, right? Chunking things out in kind of smaller steps to think about that bigger picture. Short steps will get you to your distant destination. Love that. Thanks, Elizabeth.
And then we have Lisa Riker. She's our career and professional development lead, working with individuals a lot. And she said, it's meaningful and helpful to have clear expectations about priorities. And it would be really helpful to hear that we are supported with some leeway to push some things out, and that we are trusted and supported by our managers for making some of these tough decisions while realizing that we all want to provide the best support to our campus and our community clients as we can. To acknowledge that during these uncertain times, it's actually okay to do less and to do it well than to be in the status quo or worse, a panic mode. Equitable performance reviews for all is a helpful strategy for us to support employees to complete goals in uncertain conditions and to show you are invested and that you care about their well-being and morale. And so talking about building trust right now is important.
And Angela Stopper, Dr. Stopper, our Chief Learning Officer and Director of People and Organization Development, even in uncertainty, work needs to progress. Work goes on, right? Start by being transparent about the uncertainty. Discuss what is known and unknown. Think about goals that can be created for what is known and options that can be created for what is unknown. Also understand that being flexible and nimble is a skill that can be practiced and strengthened. It doesn't come naturally to everyone, and there's steps that you and your team can take to grow your and their skill set in some of these areas. Also, understand that in times of uncertainty, people may need support, um, more support than they've needed in the past. Ask your team members what they really need from you as their manager to be successful. Ask how they're feeling about setting goals now. Ask what is more comfortable, thinking long term, short term, or even in the middle. The beauty of our new performance program, Achieve Together, is we're meeting with people to discuss goals more often and really about how things are going. This allows flexibility and the ability to make adjustments and tweaks as the world changes around us. Make sure that your team members know that, and trust will allow the goals to flex as the situation and the world changes. So we have a few resources for you when you're thinking about, okay, what's next, right? And you'll be able to have access to all of these resources in the companion job aid that comes along with this recorded session. Just a quick kind of highlight of what we have to offer for you in terms of follow-up support. We always say this is an invitation for future support, and our team is here and happy to help. Jan and I facilitate Ask Us Anything sessions around performance, specifically our new Achieve Together program monthly. And when you visit our website, you can add those to your BCal. We also offer one-on-one performance consulting support. So you want to learn how to better engage in the new program, work on your goals, planning for check-in conversations, thinking about the new coaching model. Also thinking about using the achievement criteria. You can book me directly on our Achieve Together website for those one-on-one consultations. Our Achieve Together website also includes an incredible amount of resources, kind of process guidance around how we do performance at UC Berkeley, as well as a extensive knowledge base, program toolkit, opportunities for future training around Achieve Together, et cetera. And you can also join the Cal Coaching Network or start a coaching circle on your team, and you can learn all about that on the coaching page on the Achieve Together website. And we've also curated some kind of specific working in a remote environment and planning and engaging in kind of priority shifting conversations materials for you. And those are all going to be linked in the job aid for the recorded session. You can also visit the grow.berkeley.edu page for all the wonderful things the people and organization development team is doing to support staff, whether it might be around career development, professional development, thinking about people managing, being an effective individual contributor, getting engaged with staff organizations, finding self-service resources, and access to one-on-one consulting. We're here to help. So I'm going to take it over to Jan so we can close out our session today. And thanks so much.
Great, thanks, Colin. And I think what we learned here today is that goal setting is something you can do in uncertain times. It's important to think about what is important for your employee. Do they want to talk about long-term, or they really just want to focus on short-term? So think about that. Also, to be very flexible in what is the goal. They may be wildly different than the goals that you had or that you thought you were with your employee about. That's okay. Be upfront about that and work together on what is an appropriate goal and what would be an appropriate timeline. Again, maybe a long-term goal that's 6 months, and in other times could have been 3. So I think you have the tools. I think you can do it. It seems like it's an impossible task, but it's actually, we know how to do this. And this is really an opportunity to seize the moment and take advantage of the new things that might arise that we didn't even know were possible.
Great. And then our final slide there, Jen, you can go to the next one. We've got our contact information and our smiling faces. Never hesitate to contact us. We're always happy to support. Thanks so much for your time today, and be on the lookout for more opportunities to learn more about Achieve Together and how we can be effective around performance and supportive of our collective work at UC Berkeley. Thanks, y'all, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.